Welcome to Success Your Own Way, a podcast about how real people define and redefine success throughout their careers. Hosted by Tina Shurick and Ifat Rogers, this show features candid conversations with guests who've made intentional choices, navigated change, and built lives aligned to their values. Their guests share their stories as well as strategies and tactics that help them along the way. Tina's a certified coach and a former corporate leader who supports professionals in making confident, values-driven decisions. Ifat is a consultant with a background in food science and engineering, helping people solve complex problems with a practical, no-nonsense approach. Each episode offers inspiration and actionable insights for anyone rethinking what success looks like in their life and how to get there.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our episode of Success Your Own Way. Today, we're excited to have Damon. I'm going to turn it over to Tina, and we're going to jump right in.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
You ready, Damon?
I think I'm ready.
All right, super. I get to introduce Damon. He and I worked together at Microsoft a number of years ago, and I'm thrilled that he's on the podcast today. His most recent professional role was a radical shift from big tech at Microsoft to managing a middle school classroom in Bloomington, Minnesota for 4 years. He recently retired from that in 2024. But prior to that, he was at Microsoft for over 21 years. He served in multiple roles, all customer facing within the field sales organization. And his final role there was leading a sales team that covered Microsoft's higher education and K-12 customers in the Midwest. He also had roles leading Microsoft's enterprise software business and the core infrastructure business in the Midwest. He began his career at Microsoft in 1998 as a sales channel manager and served as commercial account executive. And throughout his tenure at Microsoft, he earned several awards for excellence. I had the privilege of working with him and can vouch for his excellence, indeed. But that's not all. Prior to joining Microsoft, he was a senior consultant at Connect Computer and served as a senior consultant with Accenture as a business analyst and developer. Now, Damon's not all about work. He does have a family and a life outside of work. He's actually a native Chicagoan, and his family still resides in the Windy City. But he lives with his wife, Julie, and daughters, Jana and Alicia, in the southeast suburbs. And his community involvement includes service on the Memorial Blood Center Advisory Board, as well as the Osiris Organization Board. He enjoys basketball, a sport near and dear to my own heart, reading and traveling with his family. And he's a proud booster of the University of St. Thomas basketball team, where he played 4 years and earned a BA in business. Damon, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Tina. It's a pleasure to be here. My first ever podcast, so I can't wait.
I love it. The audience got a chance to hear a little bit about you, but in your own words, tell us your story. How did you get where you are today?
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, I played college basketball, but I did not find there were any big college basketball programs that were looking for someone of my relatively diminished height and diminished skills. So I played the D3 level versus D1, despite wanting to play for some big school on TV. That wasn't how it worked out. So I came to Minnesota, where I got a business degree at St. Thomas, which was great. I met my future wife there. And I graduated from college with a business degree thinking maybe I was going to be a big deal in business. And because Accenture wanted to hire, the best and the brightest, I'm like, well, yeah, you've come to the right place. And I assumed that I was going to be consulting because the company's name was Accenture, Consulting, or Anderson Consulting at the time. My let's just say naivete was quickly dispelled as I found that they threw a spec pack at me and said, learn how to code in COBOL. And that was not exactly my forte. So it was a great place to be from, but was a wonderful place to graduate from as well, too. So that led me, I realized I wasn't great at coding, but I did like the technology field. And that eventually led me to Connect, which eventually led me to Microsoft, which was a wonderful career. And then, of course, as you said, that led to a radical career shift as well, too, towards teaching, which was both exciting and terrifying and fun and challenging and rewarding and exhausting and all of the things. So
I feel that as you're saying that, actually.
Indeed.
So as you're thinking about kind of your plans and what you thought your life would look like, how did that align with your actual life experience?
Right. How does anybody's? It was, if you would have asked me, like maybe as a 22-year-old, what is your life plan? It would have been, well, get a good job, marry a great girl, start a family, and, kind of naively, that was the plan. And actually, that's sort of how it worked out. Yeah. So, pat on the back for that. But obviously those plans change over time and you try and, your bar continues to raise in many cases. And so I frankly way outshot what I ever thought I would achieve career-wise, and have a wonderful relationship with my wife of 32 years and two great kids that are now up and grown and out of the house and living their life and thriving. And so, it wasn't exactly what I would have guessed, but it's been a wonderful life so far. So
I'm going to have a follow-up. Reflecting on that, is there something you would say to your 22-year-old self, kind of in retrospect, something you wish you had known at that age?
I think as a 22-year-old, I would have probably tried to stick much more closely to like what I thought was a defined path. And I think the older I've gotten, the more I realized that's an illusion, that there are no real defined paths, that you have to set your own path. And that's fine. Like, that's not just fine, that's great, because you get to decide. And if you're taking a road less traveled, because I don't know anybody else who left like a really high paying job to go take a 90% pay cut to teach in middle school, which, by the way, is not a great ego boost for a lot of reasons, but it was wonderful, right? And that's, so run your own race, as I've heard it described before, because that's I think a worthwhile race to run.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think our audience is dying to know, as I and Ifat, because we haven't really talked about this either. What caused you to leave Microsoft and pursue this noble profession as a middle school teacher? What was it about it that drew you in?
Yeah, so working at Microsoft, most of my time there was working with big corporate customers. So, the household brand names that we all know, and in many cases buy products from or services from or whatever the case might be. And that was wonderful, but it was very financially lucrative. But it wasn't very fulfilling after a while. After you reach, I think, a certain, there's been all sorts of studies done on happiness. And after you reach a certain level of financial means, then it's like it doesn't, a little bit more money or a lot more money doesn't make you any happier. And that was certainly like the case. And so I thought, well, if I could move closer to education, that might be interesting, because I had always been interested in that. So Microsoft had an education team. And so I was able to transfer to their education team, thinking that was going to scratch that itch. And it did a little bit, but not enough. And so after 4 years of doing that, I realized I really wanted to make a bigger shift, which is not an easy thing to do in Minnesota. You have all sorts of licensure, you have all sorts of educational credits that were required, and that's a good thing to have high standards. But it's also, time consuming, and then you have to do a practicum, student teaching essentially. And so by that point, it was time to like, well, I did most of the studying, the education credits and so forth at night and on weekends, but you got to do student teaching during the classroom hours, which were going to be a problem working at Microsoft. So it was time to go. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
well, I mean, that's a big leap. What was it about middle school and social studies that really interested you? So I hear you on the education side and wanting to have a more fulfilling life. That's been a theme actually for all of our guests so far.
Yeah.
What was it that drew you into that social studies in that middle school age range?
Well, social studies was always my favorite subject, regardless of what we were studying. So whether that was, we were studying the humanities in some cases. I got a chance to take a great course in high school on the humanities, but I love history and read history just for for fun, read history for inspiration, read history for, obviously for knowledge as well too. But I would have guessed coming out of my teaching programs that I was going to teach in high school. I had a wonderful mentor when I was doing my student teaching. I did that at Holy Angels here in the Twin Cities, which was great. And I kind of envisioned myself teaching in a classroom, maybe AP US History or some other AP class. And when push came to shove, it was 2020, which was when I was trying to get my job. We were in the depths of COVID, and most schools didn't have any idea what that was even going to look like for them. And so trying to find any job at all was really, really difficult. And I was like, come on, do you have any idea? Like you want to hire me. Like you want me on that wall. You need me on that wall. And it was more like, yeah, right along. And so when I found the middle school job, I was like, well, this is going to be different. Not exactly what I thought, but it had some great advantages that were also in some cases disadvantages. And the biggest one that I can think of immediately is that I was the only social studies teacher. So I did not have to worry that you were at this point in your curriculum and you were at this point in your curriculum and I was 2 weeks behind and I better catch up. It was like, no, I think I want to talk about this today, or I think we're going to do this today, or I'd like to try this project. And so I got to do all that. The problem was I didn't have anybody to collaborate with to say, what do you think about this? Or how have you done this before? And that wasn't an option. So it was very much teaching it can be very lonely, which was surprised me because you're really surrounded by people all day. But there's also an aspect of it where you're a sole proprietor of your classroom. And that was an interesting challenge to overcome.
Definitely. I'm sure that surprised you. That level of autonomy, I wouldn't have thought. I always think of community when I think of teachers. And
and there is that.
Yeah.
But, when you don't have anybody to sort of bounce things off of, because I'm looking across the hall at the English language arts teacher who is wonderful, or looking across at the math teacher who was fantastic. And these are still people I keep in touch with today. And I love them, but you're not going to compare notes on how to teach geometry versus how to teach geography. It's not, it doesn't, really, doesn't really fit.
So. That makes sense.
This is great. I haven't thought about teaching in the same way, but as you're talking, there were things that you probably didn't even know that you didn't know. Did you have mentors? How did you learn? How did you develop as kind of the only teacher doing that type of that curriculum?
Well, when I think about, mentors, it's one thing to think about teaching mentors, but I kind of think about mentors broadly in the context of life, because teaching is, brings a lot of different things into the classroom. And so I've been very, very fortunate. I had first of all, my parents were great mentors for me. I had some wonderful teachers. My wife and my kids have mentored me in many ways. I've had wonderful coworkers and some good bosses as well too. And so mentors are something that I've always tried to surround myself and collect as many really smart people around myself as I can, which is one of the reasons why I want to reconnect with Tina, because this is something that I continue to learn from. And so I think bringing all that into the classroom is a unique challenge. And oftentimes, the kids that you're teaching are not necessarily impressed by the fact that well, look, here's a picture of me, Michael Jordan. Like, who's Michael Jordan? Or the shoe guy. He's the one with the shoes. I'm like, you don't know who Michael Jordan is? Like, sit down. We need to talk, right? So it was an interesting challenge and definitely an ego deflating experience to work with so many middle schoolers. And so I found, I don't know that I have a very specific answer on who the mentors were for me. They're the great teachers that I was surrounded by, some of the great teachers that I was mentored by who were outside of the school as well too. But it's kind of a very much an independent journey in many ways too. So
well, in 360, right? You're learning from your kids, you're learning from your students, you're learning from bosses, and I think that theme has also come up numerous times, where the idea of becoming who you want to become and growing as a person requires you to look all around you, even at people with less experience or different experience or different cultural background or what have you. So
right.
I think that really aligns well. As you know, the name of this podcast is Success Your Own Way.
Yeah.
And you have created that for yourself.
tried.
But I'm curious, how has your definition of success changed over time, and how would you define it today?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think once upon a time when I was that 22-year-old or younger, it would have been like, you know, have I made enough money? Or have I made a lot of money, I guess, right? And I don't know that I could have defined what a lot was at that point. But that, I think in American culture particularly, that's sort of how many people define success. I think as I've evolved over time, I sort of tend to put success into buckets that I value. I mean, one of those is relationships. So I try and invest heavily in relationships. I love to meet new people. I love to reconnect with people that I, already have a relationship with. And I really love to keep close to me the people that are very, very important to me. And I've been fortunate to have a lot of great people that I surround myself with or try to surround myself with. So keeping those relationships healthy, I think, is important. I think physical fitness to me has always been important. Growing up as an athlete, it was very important to me, but I also found that it's not just about athletics. A lot of it is mental health for me. Like I use physical fitness as a very important tool in, keeping my mental health strong as well too. Yeah. And fortunately, now that I've been retired from teaching for a year, teaching is wonderful and very highly energetic, but also kind of sedentary because you're in a classroom all day. And so I've been able to get into better shape than I have been in a long time. So that's wonderful. It's important to me to stay mentally fit as well too. And so Microsoft was great for that. I mean, you're always running 1,000 miles an hour, right? But then trying to transition from that into something else, the classroom was a really interesting challenge for that because I had to learn so many different skills and so many different things that I never would have guessed. And so that was a great transition for me that also helped me in some ways slow down from the frantic pace of Microsoft. I think also giving back is a big part of the equation, and teaching was a big part of that. I wanted to spend some time, investing in young people, and particularly, in something that I felt passionate about, because teaching about something that you're not all that passionate about, the kids, man, see through that so fast, so fast. So that's part of it. And I like to give back too. Like you mentioned the Memorial Blood Center, I've donated blood over 200 times with the Memorial Blood Center. So I still got a little bit left. They say I always give 100% unless you're donating blood, in which case it's not great. And then of course, like financial independence underwrites all of that. So if you don't have that, then it can be difficult to do all those other things. So those are.
Sorry to interrupt you. Okay. Another guest who came on a few weeks ago who talked about that financial independence is really just the thing that allows you to do all of the amazing other things, and if that's not there, then it's really tough to
because if you're worried about how you're going to pay for the mortgage or pay for your car payments or just put food on the table, that should be your first priority.
Yeah, so 100%. Totally right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Changing gears and talking about decisions, can you point out one or two decisions you've made throughout your career that really you feel like changed the course of your career or your life?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think if I think about it career-wise, I would say the biggest decision that I made that was important in my career was, I mentioned starting with Accenture and being in a software developer kind of role. I wasn't great at it and didn't love it. And so as I shifted to Microsoft, I shifted into a sales role. And that tapped into my competitive nature as a one-time athlete. That was perfect because there is always a scoreboard in sales. And you know exactly where you stand, for better or for worse, right? You could be up by 3 touchdowns or you could be down by 30 and you know where you stand. So that's a wonderful thing. But it was also something that worked well for me and that I was also able to succeed at. And so that's kind of a virtuous cycle when you find something that you're good at and that you enjoy and that you have success in. So that was an important professional decision I made to go from a technical kind of role into a sales role. But from a personal standpoint, which I think is almost as important, if not more important, it was convincing my wife, who was a friend in college, but who was also had a long-term relationship, that maybe we could and should be more than friends. And that took what I felt and like a really long time, but 32 years later, here we are, and it's been a fantastic partnership that has really been, I think, a huge part of my success, not just professionally, but personally as well too. So
Absolutely. That family connection and the relationships, as you mentioned, really are the fulfilling parts of life, and your ability to nurture those things just becomes so incredibly important to your overall happiness, your mental health, your physical
For sure.
health, as you mentioned, et cetera.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tug on a thread that's a passion point of mine, which is leadership. So you've held many leadership positions at Microsoft. And I, in a previous podcast, have shared my kind of key traits of leaders, and I'm curious what yours are. So when you think of some of the best leaders or the leader attributes that you think are most important for those listening out there, what would you say?
I think this word has gotten a lot of play in the corporate world, but I think it's almost become a cliche, but I do think that there is a real truth to it, and it's authenticity. And I think that the kids that I saw in middle school confirmed this, because like if you're trying to fake authenticity, good luck. Good luck. Middle schoolers can see through it like that, and so can most adults, right? And so I think the best leaders that I've ever worked for were just authentically themselves. And if, as part of that, they cared about your personal success, then that was something that, made me want to work harder for them, work smarter for them, push a little bit further. And I think the leaders that I have worked for that I always had the most respect for were the ones who were authentic themselves. And sometimes that was very different than my personality, but like you do you, and that's great, because the old story about be yourself because everyone else is taken is like, I think that's to me one of the most important things. And I think there are a number of leaders who are good at it, and then there's others where you're like, oh, please, so
you can see through those.
You can.
The other thing I think about with authenticity, which that's brilliant, and I totally agree, is it takes too much energy to be anyone besides who you are.
Great point.
Like, how exhausting is it to try to show up in a place or in an environment or in a role or with people that you really don't feel like you can be yourself? That's
right. And you hear that sometimes where people say something like, never meet your heroes, because it's always so disappointing. And I was like, that's certainly true. On the other hand, like, I got a chance to meet Michael Jordan one time, and he was charming.
Oh, wow.
He was just fantastic. And I was like, oh, wow, that was fantastic. So
that had to be a highlight.
Yeah. It was.
Yeah, amazing.
Going back to authenticity, I love that. Do you think we lose some of the authenticity as we age, or actually start to embrace it more?
I think we start to embrace it more. At least I think people who are self-reflective and honest with themselves do, because you start to realize, what, like, what am I saving this for? Why would I not be my authentic self when I'm getting closer and closer to like whatever end of this journey looks like? And so as evidenced by my decision to go teach social studies, like, I don't, like, if people think that's weird, that's their problem. That's not my problem. My wife was just last night, I was asking her what she was reading, and it's this book called Let Them by Mel Robbins. And I had never heard of it. And I was like, well, what is it about? She's like, well, it's basically, you do you and don't worry about other people. I was like, is that a revelation? And she just looks at me. She's like, well, I guess you've always done that, haven't you? And so, so anyway, but I think authenticity, the more you get into your career or into your life, the more you realize, like, if not now, then when?
Yeah. That's great. That's great advice. That's a good reminder for those of us who feel like we have to conform. In addition to being authentic, do you have other tips or advice for people who are kind of at that stage in their career where they're just wondering, is this where I want to be, or should I think about something else? Do you have anything for those who are considering a change but maybe are unsure about making one?
I think, it wasn't an easy decision for me to decide on teaching. I knew I wanted to do something else, but it's one thing to say, I don't want to do this anymore versus I do want to do that, whatever that is for you. And I mean, I ran through a whole litany of like, maybe I want to run a bike shop. Maybe I want to buy a Irish pub. Maybe I want to start a travel business. Like these are things I like to do. Maybe I want to have an independent bookstore or like all sorts of different ideas. I want to start a consulting company. I want to do whatever the case might be. And I eventually kind of just over time kind of worked my way through all those. So I think doing the hard self-reflection work, which nobody can do for you. And that's part of the running your own race or choosing your own path is like, I'm sorry, there's no book that you're going to read. There's no magical guru who's going to answer the question for you. Just ask Tony Robbins. He'll tell you what the answer is. Like, no, that's not really how that's going to work out. So you kind of have to do the hard work yourself. And that's a journey and it's hard. It's, do I really want to do this or not? Or do I really want to do that? Or is what I'm doing now, like I probably stayed what I was doing at Microsoft longer than I should have. But man, felt like I was making a lot of money too. So, which is more important? Is it important to be happy or is it important to make more money? You have to answer that question yourself. And that's different answer for every person. So,
100%.
Yeah. Like, I have one last question around misconception. So like I mentioned, you don't know what you don't know, or kind of as you surround yourself with mentors. Did you have any misconceptions that you feel held you back? What were they and how did you disprove them?
I don't necessarily think it held me back, but I was always fortunate enough in my athletic career to be part of winning teams. And I would like to think that I played a role in the teams being successful. And part of that winning team atmosphere is like, we're all in this together, right? All for one and one for all. And the idea that we're one big happy family. And you can see how that sort of mentality has started to even fray as I look at college sports and I see how, name, image, and likeness deals and transfer portals and so forth. It's very much like, what? If this guy can get $1.5 million to go play for that school, I got to take that. Like, I got to think about me. And there's nothing wrong with that. Right. But I also think there's a lot of corporations when I was, in my corporate career who try to espouse the idea that we're all one big happy family. And it is not one big happy family, because at no point does your big happy family decide to lay off 9,000 people, right? So at least my family would not do that. I'm not sure about others. And so that's difficult. I think it was a difficult transition or difficult mindset to adopt, is like, you kind of have to be, I didn't want to lose that. We're all in this together and camaraderie. And I always tried to bring that to the teams I was on, but also tried to be very realistic about, at any point, this could end, and it could end quickly for any of us. And so I don't know that it held me back, but I think it was a big aha moment that I'm not exactly sure. It probably just occurred over time where you're like, oh, right, that's not, it's not exactly how I thought it was. And so that's probably how I'd answer that.
Yeah. I mean, both Ifat and I spent a lot of years in corporate America, experienced very similar. And we've had guests on here who had the same experience, thinking, corporate America does have a ton of benefits, the financial, the teamwork, the ability to grow your career and advance within the same four walls type of thing, which for those of us who aren't like looking to change all the time, it's nice to be able to feel like I can maintain something and also tweak something. I think that's just the appeal of corporate America.
For sure.
But as you've mentioned, it is very difficult to keep that going and continue to feel like you're growing and contributing. And I know Ifat's mentioned her turning point was she felt no longer empowered to do what was right for her team. And I wonder if you experienced that, and if that was one of the elements that kind of drew you to pursue other things.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, I used to, people who worked closely with me would hear me say this every once in a while, is I want to maintain majority ownership of my soul.
I love that.
When it got to be like, I think I've only got 51%, it might be time to like start thinking about something else. And I think, as a leader, you have certain levers that you can pull on and knobs you can adjust and dials you can turn. And then sometimes you can't. And other times you get told, no, you're going to pull on this lever, or you're going to, drop that dial down by this amount or whatever. And that's really hard, because that's maybe not how I want to do that. And so those benefits that you get from working at a big corporation, those also come with drawbacks and with limitations as well too. And when people ask me, as they often did, well, why did you leave Microsoft? I was like, well, I made enough and I'd had enough.
Yeah.
And that was, fair enough. And so there's a lot of people I know who are still there, and I wish them all the best, and stock price is going through the roof and earnings are going through the roof, but also, it's a really difficult time still to work in the tech business. So
the food industry too.
The food industry too. Yeah,
I see a lot, and there's a lot of fun working with food, and there is kind of the feeling of family because we eat together all the time.
And it's nourishment. It's literally you're nourishing people.
It is the nourishment, and to me, some like taking a step back from that, like this is family, to understanding I can still be a part of something bigger, even if it's not part of a specific team, was freeing for me, because I was afraid to leave the overall supporting team that I was a part of. So it's kind of like, okay, how do I get this outside of corporate?
Well, and I'll tell one quick story that I think draws a lot of this stuff together. So I was working at Microsoft, and I wanted to take this trip with my dad. My brother and I were going to take this trip with my dad. We love to travel. My family's always traveled together. And my dad, his father, had served in the Irish Republican Army. And the Irish Republican Army, or Ireland, was celebrating a 100-year anniversary in 2016 of their fight for independence from Great Britain. Only problem is that celebration that we wanted to take my dad to in Ireland was taking place during Microsoft's fourth quarter. Well, if you're in a sales job and you're going to take 2 weeks off to go on vacation in the fourth quarter, you're going to have some real uncomfortable questions to answer. And I had to answer those questions, but I wasn't going to not take the trip with my dad. And so we not only went to Ireland and did that celebration, but we also went to some World War II sites in Normandy. My dad was a huge history buff as well too, and he had some relatives that passed around D-Day. And so we visited those sites. And my dad now has developed dementia. He is 88 years old, and he does not remember a lot of things, but you know what he does remember? He remembers that trip. And so do I. And so these are like, was that a trade-off? Yeah, probably hurt me. Probably didn't get as big a bonus. Probably didn't get as much stock that year. But on the other hand, was it worth it? Yeah,
100%.
It was worth it. So
that's a great story, and a really great way to close out this episode of our Success Your Own Way podcast. So I'll just wrap it up and say thank you. Thank you to Damon for being here with us today.
It was my pleasure.
Appreciate you telling your story and sharing more about who you are and what you believe and where you've been and how you got there. Appreciate that. And to Ifat, thank you for co-hosting with me as always. Appreciate you.
Thank you both. And a reminder for everyone, if you found this episode inspiring, please share the episode. We also have a YouTube channel, so check that out and subscribe, do all of those things. And one last thing, Damon, if people are listening to this and it's like, oh, I'm considering this career switch, where can they find you?
Where can they find me? Not on social media. So you can probably find me on LinkedIn. Every once in a while, I'll check LinkedIn. So feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn if you want to do that. So yeah.
Well, thank you. And thank you, Tina. And join us for our next episode of Success Your Own Way.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Success Your Own Way. We hope you found this episode inspiring and took away actionable insights. Please tune in for our next episode. And if you know someone who is rethinking what success looks like in their life, please share this episode with them.